All eyes are on San Francisco today.
It is January 2007.
Hello.
The excitement is building here today.
The buzz is building here at the Moscone Centre. Steve Jobs is expected to unveil something big. And speculation is running wild.
Apple is working on an iPod with phone
The
function.
most significant product announcement in years.
So thank you.
It was basically the greatest technology presentation of all time.
Is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. Is a revolutionary mobile phone. Is a breakthrough internet communications device.
BlackBerry even thought the presentation was faked somehow because it could just do so many things that none of their devices should be.
Are you getting it? This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
Now, the iPhone is the best-selling product in history, bar none. Absolutely the best-selling product in history.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's cool. Well, here's what people don't know. You have to have this thing with you. This is the unit. This is the whole thing.
Apple changed our behavior with multiple products. They did it over and over and over and over again.
It's true, we changed the world. We didn't even know why. We did it because we could.
Apple has definitely changed the world, and I sometimes apologize for that. Apple became the monster.
It is called the Silicon Valley, and over the last decade it has become the land of high technology.
So Silicon Valley was a place where anybody could do anything. That's how I would describe it, which is why when I came here, I decided to stay. Because this was a place where your background didn't matter, your education didn't matter, your age didn't matter, your gender didn't matter, your family didn't. None of these things mattered. Nothing mattered except what you could do. Hello, I am Andy Cunningham, and I am very happy to be here. And I am connected to Steve Jobs because back in the early 80s, I helped him launch Macintosh.
I'm Hartmut Esslinger. I'm a designer. My first encounter with Silicon Valley was in Helsinki at the World Design Congress, where an Apple computer was on display, Apple II. And I toyed with it a bit. You couldn't do much with it, but it had that flair. It fascinated me that this little thing contained all the complexity of computing. That was the cool thing about it. That's when I started researching Apple. Silicon Valley wasn't really a concept for me back then. Of course, I knew that the computer industry was here, but it wasn't front and center in my thinking.
So there's two kinds of computers that were around in the 70s. The calculator was one. That was actually a computer, and that's when they came out and we were all replacing our slide rules with calculators. Then there were the big, giant computers that IBM was building, which were huge. You know, we called them mainframes.
Computers were big, hulking pieces of metal.
The offices looked like torture chambers. I mean, visually, there weren't really big differences between a prison and an office, except that the doors in a prison would be locked. So I, as a designer, and Steve, as an entrepreneur, we wanted to do something about it. We looked at the world and we thought, there's something not right here. We have to fix that. Okay, so we have this meeting with Steve Jobs. We come in, Steve closes the door, nobody else is there. So I ask him, what's your goal? And he says, I want to sell 1 million computers. I say, well, then you'll have to up your game with the designs you have. He says, you're right. The designs are ugly. We just don't know what we're doing here in Silicon Valley.
I'm Daniel Kottke. We're doing an interview on the porch here in Palo Alto. I was a college friend of Steve Jobs. I love books, and I saw this book called Be Here Now. That was a square book with a mandala on the cover by Ram Dass. And I knew who Ram Dass was. He was a very popular cultural figure. And this book was about his guru in India. I was carrying that book around campus because it was the most interesting thing. And I was showing it to people. Look at this. It's very interesting. And Steve was immediately interested. I didn't know about his life in California with electronics. He was ambitious, secretly. He was secretly ambitious.
The Silicon Valley has grown out of tiny silicon chips, which have revolutionized the computer industry and spawned a thriving subculture called the entrepreneurial spirit. Like many young Californians, Stephen Jobs is the classic example of the computer industry's philosophy, which says, take a chance, you've got nothing to lose.
Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs were friends. Steve was more of a hangout guy back then. Woz was the engineer. He was at Hewlett-Packard. He saw that the days of these big machines were numbered. They simply didn't make sense anymore.
Here we have it. There it is. That was the product. This is the Apple I. Steve Jobs had very little to do with creating this computer. Steve Wozniak designed it completely on his own and wrote the basic interpreter.
It was always this idea that drove Steve. He wanted to make a dent into the universe. When Woz showed the device at the homebrew club, everyone thought it was great. So he said, take it. There's no intellectual property. When they went home, Steve said, we're making a company out of this.
Steve Jobs said, well, okay, let's have a circuit board made and we'll sell it as a kit.
And that was the birth of Apple.
There's a bite.
The key event for me was in April of 1977. I went to the first West Coast Computer Fair, where maybe a couple thousand people were enthusiasts like myself. And it was like, a celebration almost of computers touching the mainstream. I saw the Apple II for the very first time. Apple truly changed my life with the Apple II. I just fell in love with it, so much so that I had to work there. The Apple II drew me to Apple like a moth to a flame.
When I saw this personal computer, as it was being called at the time, I thought, oh my God, this is gonna change the world.
And that's when Steve Jobs started to become the real salesman.
In the great tradition of startups, we started Apple because we wanted the product ourselves.
Steve Jobs used to say that the computer, in particular, was a bicycle for the mind. And what he meant by that was that it was a tool that would make you way better than you would have been without it.
There was a long period of time when nobody really knew what to do with a personal computer. It was a very uncomfortable period. I know that Apple started thinking about things like having recipes and having an Apple computer in the kitchen and have recipes on it. One of the phrases we used was in the early personal computer business was, we make something and there's a big fence around us. All these companies that are making stuff, we throw the thing over the fence. And if there's a feeding frenzy outside the fence, we know we're on the right track.
Arguably, the Apple II is really the first personal computer. For all intents and purposes, it really was the first thing that would sit in your home and really have a big role to play. And it had the first killer app in the form of VisiCalc, which is a predecessor to Excel.
But then Apple delivered two flops. The Apple III was a disaster. Next, they made the laser for $12,000, way too expensive. And this crappy design, it looked like a dead cat on the table. I wanted to free the computer from its office image, its science image, give it a daily life image. It's a part of your life, like a coffee spoon. This idea that it has to be big, heavy, and olive green because you don't want to see the dust on it, all of this false thinking was off the table.
But at the same time, the IBM PCs were really taking off in sales. IBM was a big bureaucratic company that symbolized what's wrong with the computer industry. They were so dominant that it wasn't such that they were both dominant but not innovative. In a way, they were an excellent foil for Steve to use. He always liked to if you had an enemy, it would motivate you more.
Steve was a visionary. He really understood what was going to happen in the future.
Morning, Fred. The Xerox machine presents your morning mail on a screen. This one looks interesting. Let's take a look at this. Push another button, and the information is sent electronically to similar units around the corner or around the world. This is an experimental office system. It's in use now at the Xerox Research Center in Palo Alto, California.
I first went over there in 1979, and I saw what they were doing with the larger screens, proportionally spaced text, and the mouse.
A cursor control device, which we call the mouse.
And so I remember coming back to Apple thinking, our future has just changed. This is where we have to go.
I was sitting at my desk at Xerox, and Steve called me, and he said, I hear you're a great guy. Everything you've done so far is crap. Come and work for me, for the new Macintosh division. I went over, and I saw the prototype Mac. in a room that was full of chaos. It was like a dorm room where the students were all hanging out, working on some project. You know, it wasn't like a company. I'd never seen anything like it. But what was common was enthusiasm. These were people who really wanted to change the world. They had all different ideas about how the world should be changed.
So we thought, what is Apple? Apple is more feminine, young and sporty. The devices must be as small as possible.
Small is powerful.
The Mac team was a hand-picked team by Steve, and he kept the number to 100. And he had a whole building just for Macintosh. It had a pirate's flag hanging above it.
A symbol of rebelliousness. Anyone who wants to make a big change in the world is by definition a rebel. You have to go against the status quo. He was so excited about what we could do, not so much what we are doing, but what we will be doing and how important it could be. He got us just really excited and motivated to work. So a lot of people were scared of him because he was so passionate and also critical.
The way that we decided to launch the product was so different. It was great. It was a great commercial.
When they showed it to the board of directors, dead silence. Like, no way are we paying for this. No way.
But we all wanted to achieve something big, something greater than us. We didn't want to submit to some random mediocre cowards.
Steve and I saw the final cut, and we saw this thing, and I thought, I didn't like it.
Of pure ideology, where each worker may...
There's this young woman running with a sledgehammer. Oh, I thought it was kind of scary.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of
The skinheads that were in the audience were meant to represent IBM users, this colony of sameness. And there was no creativity in you and no expression in you. And they were all sitting there watching, you know, the big brother, which was again meant to be IBM.
Our enemies shall talk themselves to death.
It was only shown once for money at the Super Bowl.
We shall profane.
And then kaboom. And the reporter said, "Oh my God, what was that?"
Have you seen this? These guys are crazy. Have you seen this?
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh.
It was shown hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of times in the press. And so the PR for that ad paid for however much it cost, which was probably a few $1 million.
I think about that commercial once in a while, and 1984 was not supposed to be like 1984, but in fact, it's exactly like 1984. Apple is wanting to control your world. And the more you buy into their infrastructure, the more they control your world. Apple became the monster.
Apple, the most valuable company on planet Earth ever.
Big tech just keeps getting bigger.
Apple stock touched a record high.
Today it's worth, nearly $4 trillion. I mean, Tim Cook has made it a much more valuable company than it was previously.
I often call Apple the only essential luxury company that exists. So you think about luxury companies like Gucci and, Ralph Lauren and Hermes and all of these fancy things. But it's not something you need. You don't need an Hermes bag. Apple is the only essential luxury company, because once you buy into this ecosystem, you're not leaving. You're not leaving. So it's essential. Because now I need them, and I can't live without them. So it's an essential luxury, which is a whole unique category of company. And they created it.
Today, here at the Flint Center in Cupertino, Apple is planning its revolt against IBM. The Flint Center is filled to capacity.
Will today be the day the computer for everyone is unveiled?
The atmosphere is fantastic. It is like a rock concert.
Steve began the meeting with a kind of benediction, a song with the second verse of The Times They Are Changing.
Come writers and critics who prophesize with your pens, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that it's naming. For the loser now will be later to win, for the times they are a-changing.
And it led up to the final moment where he wanted the Macintosh to be the first computer to introduce itself.
For the first time ever, I'd like to let Macintosh speak for itself.
What it said was, hello.
I am Macintosh. It sure is great to get out of that bag. Easy as I'm told, but right now, I'd like to sit back and listen.
I'd like to introduce to you a man who's been like a father to me, Steve Jobs. You could see that Steve is crying, just overwhelmed by the moment. And it was the largest standing ovation I've ever seen. We all went back to the Macintosh building, and a huge truck pulled up with a Macintosh for everyone on the team. We were making a computer for ourselves.
Steve Jobs did a nice thing. He had custom labels made with each person's name and stuck on the back. If you shine a light in here, you can see my signature inside the case. There's my signature, right there.
He wanted us to consider us to be artists. What do artists do? They sign their work. Maybe 40 of the most significant early people had their names embedded in every single original Macintosh.
So what happened once we launched Macintosh? We decided to set up these focus groups across the country. The people in the focus groups were, executive type users. They fell in love with the computer, and they were oohing and eyeing and, oh, that's so cool, and this, that, and the other thing. And then the last question was, so would your IT department consider buying this product for your people? And to a T, every one of them said, absolutely not. We are in trouble.
The first quarter of Mac sales in 1984 were really quite good. Apple looked at their early orders and thought, we've got a massive product, and they began to sort of make plans to ramp up production. But actually, after the first quarter, sales really dwindled. I believe they were expecting upwards of 80,000 units to be sold a month, and it fell to around 5,000 a month.
Steve kept saying we have to give more advertising for the Macintosh.
Steve went to New York to a party that turned out to be a birthday party for Andy Warhol. Meanwhile, Steve would carry the Macintosh to these parties to show people, to wow them. Andy Warhol said, "Oh, you must show this to Mick." he was really excited and thought Mick Jagger would be really excited to see it. So the next day, I guess arranged by Andy Warhol, Steve carried the Macintosh over to Mick Jagger's house. And we showed Mick the Mac, and Mick wasn't very interested. It was like right away you could see Mick was thinking, why? Why should I care about this? But as Mick was just about to give up on being demoed, his daughter came in, said, "What's that?" We said, "Oh, it's a new kind of computer." She went over to it and she loved it. And you couldn't take her hands away from it. Steve, when he saw how much she liked it and wouldn't give it up, he just left it with her. Computers are for the next generation. Kids can get it like that, whereas adults might struggle with it for weeks or years, forever.
By the beginning of 1985, then was when the real problem started.
The Mac didn't sell because it really wasn't designed to be a business computer. It was missing a lot of key attributes. And people were married to the IBM. IBM was the biggest thing since sliced bread back then in the computer world. So that's why it didn't sell. It was just, it was mispositioned. It was targeted to the wrong person.
It was very expensive. It only had 128 kilobytes of memory. And that was so low that when Steve Jobs famously announced it and showed it, unveiled it, it actually had 512 kilobytes of memory. So they really sort of like souped up what was possible on the stage, but it wasn't possible for you. But the worst part is you couldn't do anything with it. There were no apps. I think everyone has thoughts on what Steve Jobs was like as a leader in the late 70s and early 80s, right? Because it's funny, I mean, it's the stuff of legend when things are going well, and it's the stuff of nightmares when things aren't going well, because he's uncompromising in his vision. So you'll remember in the 1980s, the logo was a rainbow color of Apple. And in Fremont, the factory where they were building the Macs, Steve Jobs wanted the factory machines to sort of like line up with the colors of the rainbow in the Apple, right? I mean, that's just a totally absurd request. And yet, who are you little minion, for saying no to Steve Jobs, right? So he could ask for things that were just ridiculous, but he could also ask things that were genius. And if you were an employee at Apple, it was sort of never clear in real time to know, is this a genius request or is this the madness of Steve Jobs?
I think for the only time in his life ever, I think he thought he was failing. And having no experience with failing, I think Steve lost track of his board members.
And they fired him.
At 30, I was out, and very publicly out.
That's like someone stealing your baby out of your arms. He took it really hard.
He was an adopted child and Apple was his family.
What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and it was devastating.
He was super despondent. I was afraid he might be suicidal. After Steve was gone, Apple, at the beginning, they did really well because of the work that had been put in place when Steve was there, using, the laser writer. That's an amazing example of Steve's prescience, the laser writer. That was the solution they were looking for when the sales were down. That led to desktop publishing. So by 1986, the Mac was a leader in a booming market, the desktop publishing.
So you can start creating, brochures or newsletters or invitations to people. Suddenly you've got something that you can really do something with.
When I hung out with Steve in New York in the summer, we talked a bunch about what he should do next, and he was definitely on the track of wanting to start another company.
And so he started Next. He called on Friday and we met on Saturday. He said, I need a concept. He already had an idea of what it looked like inside the machine. So I said, I'll make a black cube. And I puzzled around a bit.
He creates this brilliant computer, right? I think it's like 12 inches by 12 inches. It's a cube. I mean, it's beautiful. For its day, it was a powerhouse. So the people that use it say, look, this thing's brilliant. I mean, Tim Berners-Lee literally invented the World Wide Web on a Next computer. But it just seems so obvious in retrospect, but it should have been obvious at the time, that this was not going to be some amazing commercial hit. Well, that computer ends up being, I want to say $12,000. I mean, it's a ridiculously expensive device. It's almost like Steve Jobs took the worst of himself at Apple and applied them without anyone blocking what he was going to do at Next. One could easily see how, were he still living today, he would not survive the social media era when colleagues or employees might record him yelling at people, and then it would go viral around the internet.
Steve Jobs did say 100 times a day, this is stupid, this is bad, this is horrible, this is ugly. He also sometimes took physical things and threw them at you. So Steve Jobs probably fired me 5 times over the course of the time that I was working with him with Next and Pixar. But the Pixar acquisition was so much fun. It was fun from the get-go. I think that Steve ultimately bought Pixar because I think he really appreciated the art that it was able to create.
Pixar went on to create the world's first computer animated feature film, Toy Story.
It was a lot of hard work, and the proof is in the pudding. The thing is wonderful. It's actually very funny, too.
Okay, so there was the premiere, down there at the Chinese Theater in LA, and up there in San Francisco. And then it started. I'm already getting goosebumps here. I'm not kidding you. People cried. Unbelievable. And just like this, Steve was a billionaire.
Apple's stock took a nosedive today.
Apple's revenue shrinks by 28%.
Dark clouds are gathering over Apple's future.
The company incurred a loss of $1 billion.
Apple failed because Steve was gone, and they lost their soul. They lost their prime reason for being. The business plan of Apple was always built on making a better product. By the time frame of, say, 1996, Windows was almost as good as the Mac.
And there's probably a lot of industries where the best technology doesn't win, just the one that is able to sort of get itself out there and become the de facto standard. That's what wins.
Apple has no more room for error.
Apple was clearly going down the tubes. They had down to only a few months left of money left, and they were desperate to be sold to some other company.
The last year the Mac market has felt like being a bit on an emotional roller coaster.
Apple has lost so much money and market share.
So please join with me now and welcome from Apple Computer, Steve Jobs.
That was like Jesus rising from the dead.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. Apple is executing wonderfully on many of the wrong things. I found people that can't wait to fall into line behind a good strategy.
The Think Different campaign came out September 1997.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, troublemakers.
What a way of thinking, how do we use our de minimis market share as a strategic asset to say that if you're part of that de minimis market share, you're part of these rogues, these mavericks, these geniuses. I mean, that was an absolutely genius marketing move. They sort of recast the image of what Apple was like, giving people a bit of hope that something was coming. But at the moment, nothing was coming. They didn't have anything.
I happen to have a special guest with me today via satellite downlink. And if we could get him up on the stage right now.
Steve had to swallow some pride to ask Bill Gates for the help. But Steve judged rightly that Microsoft had some interest in helping.
We're very excited about the new release we're building. This is called Mac Office 98.
It was convenient for Bill Gates because the antitrust trial was still going on. He needed to show that Microsoft had competition.
Microsoft is buying $150 million worth of Apple stock at market price. It is non-voting shares, and they've agreed.
Steve had the great desire to prove that he could run a company. He could make a difference. He had to prove. He had something to prove.
Steve Jobs recognized pretty quickly that the company was struggling with managing its supply chain. And so he wanted to bring in somebody who had an operational background, who could fix the manufacturing side of Apple. But Apple is it's on the cover of Business Week as a dead company. Nobody should go work there. The first person he tried to hire was the head of supply chain operations at Compaq, which was the largest computer maker in the world. That person said no, and then they immediately turned and asked that person's deputy, which was Tim Cook.
He sort of didn't want to join the company, but hey, a meeting with the guy who created the PC, visionary Steve Jobs. Yeah, sure, I'll go take that meeting. And then he is totally seduced by Steve Jobs. I mean, he says that he has a sense within, a voice within saying go west, young man, go west. To know anything about Tim Cook is to know that you're sort of talking about a Terminator, cold, calculating type figure. The thing that people forget about Steve Jobs going back to Apple is that he does not come back and sort of take the reins of CEO right away. And he's brought on as an advisor, and so he's getting a real sense of what's going on. So when Steve Jobs goes to meet Johnny Ive, he's going there to fire Johnny Ive and the industrial design team. And Johnny goes to the meeting with his resignation letter in his pocket. So both of them expect this meeting to go poorly. And instead, it's such a meeting of the minds that it completely transforms the future of the company and the course of business history. I mean, within a few days of that meeting, Steve Jobs got a prototype and he's walking around campus with a bowling ball bag, and the prototype is inside, and he's beginning to show it to people, and he couldn't be more excited. Essentially, they're going to bring back the Mac, right, from 12 years earlier, but they're going to do it for the internet age.
This is iMac. This is iMac. The whole thing is translucent. You can see into it. It's so cool.
They came up with the iMac, right? The computer that, without any dissent, changes Apple's history forever. And immediately the computer becomes a massive success.
And I thought that was great. He put personality back into the product.
Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive and Tim Cook created what many describe as Camelot and Cupertino, because they went through this period where they had hit after hit product. They could literally do nothing wrong.
The iMac looks different. It's been designed differently, but what that means is that it has to be made differently as well. It required a level of plastic injection molding that no other computer really required. Nobody knew how to do. And the person who really understands is Terry Guo, the founder of Foxconn, and he makes a phone call to Tim Cook and says, "You've got a problem, let me fix this." Terry Guo is Taiwanese, but at this time, he's one of these Taichung engineers, Taiwanese on the mainland, taking advantage of the low labor and the ubiquitous labor that's available. Terry Guo's hero is Genghis Khan, right? This military titan. He's drilling into his workers this military efficiency. What Terry understands is the value of working with Apple is not the profits. It will never be the profits. It is the learning that you get. And that bet basically ensures that Foxconn is the absolute dominant force, creating the world's most coveted products for multiple years.
And once again, Apple has announced the next big thing.
What is it this time?
And let me show you. Boom. That's iPod. I happen to have one right here in my pocket, matter of fact. There it is, right there.
Oh, that kind of gave Apple their mojo back, their reason for living. It was an innovative product made out of love of music, and beautiful thing in so many ways.
iPod, 1,000 songs in your pocket. We think this is a major, major breakthrough.
When Steve came out with his iPod, he had one simple ownable brand concept for that product, and it was 1,000 songs in your pocket. And it changed everything. Those words changed everything. Steve was a genius at figuring out what the one thing that a product should mean to people.
People wanted to be seen on the street with the white earbuds going into their pocket to demonstrate that you had an iPod, right? Because the iPod wasn't you listening to the radio, it was you listening to whatever you wanted to listen to. I mean, it sort of brought about a certain individuality that no other company was pursuing.
Steve Jobs' health is a recurring topic of discussion.
Apple doesn't seem to be telling the truth about its health.
Someone close to Steve gave me an inkling that he had cancer. Steve didn't like to talk about it. He talked about it with me occasionally, but he sometimes got really upset at me for talking about it when he didn't want to, or asking him questions, because he didn't want people to pity him. I think the cancer gave him impetus to do one more great thing before it catches up with him.
Apple had become the iPod company. But there's this fear that's developing within the culture of Apple, which is like, wait a minute, if Nokia, Motorola, Ericsson, Siemens, if they just put a sort of rudimentary iPod function within their phone, people are going to choose to have one device. Then their big cash cow business that has transformed the company and made Apple culturally relevant in a way that it never had been before. The whole company was at stake, essentially. They saw this as existential.
I'd go on walks with him, and he'd want to talk about it, but he also wanted not to give me any information at the same time. So it's just difficult. But he'd talk about it as allusions. He'd say things like, you know, Apple's doing the best work we've ever done right now. And I said, what? I can't tell you.
The iPhone by itself is a wonderful invention. None of us would want to go back to looking at printed railway schedules to find out when the train is going. The tipping point was the moment we stopped using these devices for communication and letting them steal our attention. I think that was the tipping point.
It's so clear what a distracting device it is and what it can do for your mental health. In particular, when you're just a kid and you're sort of like, you know, building the foundations of knowledge and frankly how the mind works. But it's a problem for us as well. I mean, just as parents, we're distracted by our phones while our children are right in front of us playing or wanting attention.
The best-case scenario is pretty clear. We realize that smartphones and social media are like so many things in human history, a wonderful thing, but only for users of a certain age. We also banned child labor at some point. When we as a society have a new technology, we tend to use it excessively. Later, we learn that we have to correct ourselves and regulate it by law, customs, and morality.
iPhones go from 5 million units in 2007 to 230 million by 2015.
Apple landed in China at a time when millions of Chinese people were coming out of poverty.
The iPhone just becomes like this conspicuous way to demonstrate that you're young and you're maybe wealthy or that you're on the path to wealth, right? That you're different. Just for the Sanlitun store alone, they were often selling 25,000 phones a day. The demand was insatiable.
China became its second largest market behind the United States. But in the late 2000s, Apple and Foxconn began to face a lot of criticism for the workplace conditions at these factories. We're talking about factories that have hundreds of thousands of people.
A series of suicides at iPhone manufacturer Foxconn in Shenzhen, China, has prompted labor organizations to take action.
If you're working a 12-hour shift, which is pretty typical at Foxconn, you're not allowed to talk. There are penalties for laughing, and you are just doing your work. And it's just monotonous routine, you know, minute after minute, hour after hour, with a few bathroom breaks and a break for lunch. Apple exploits Chinese workers, and I flip that on its head and ask the question, why does Beijing allow Apple to exploit its workers? And the answer is technology transfer. Since 2008, the number of people trained by Apple, according to their own numbers, is 30 million, greater than the labor force of California. There's no place on the planet outside of China where Apple could produce in the quality, quantity, and at the cost that they're able to do everything within China.
Well, I knew it was coming. It was pretty obvious. He came over to my house for the very last time. He looked awful. It was almost hard I talked with him for about an hour, and it was, I had to cry when he left.
It was like Kennedy's death. Many people's hope died. Kennedy, too, stood for a better future. And when someone who stands for that dies too early, your own hopes die with him.
I think it was a sense of loss when he died for the world, because he had done so much to change the world, just like he said he would do, right? And when that force goes away and dies, it's like the world is missing something. It's not just me missing him, or you. It's the whole world has lost something very precious. Tim Cook has done an outstanding job of being a great steward of the assets that he was left by Steve, but he was never able to turn it back into the visionary, missionary, as I like to call it, company that Apple was under Steve Jobs.
Apple lost that boldness that Steve gave to Apple, and now they're huge.
So instead of the next big thing kinds of products in the Tim Cook era, it was just incremental improvements to the products that they had, not the next big thing.
The problem has to do with spending a little bit too much time worrying about the profit margin of each one of the businesses, which I'm sure they spend a lot of time on.
I really hope that Apple can live another 50 years and can reinvent itself. I really do hope so, because it would be really, really heartbreaking if Apple ceased to be.